The German sniper was found tied to an ancient oak, rawhide cords. His rifle snapped apart and arranged around the base of the tree with deliberate precision, symbols carved into the bark above his head, meaningless to the American patrol that found the body, but to the enemy forces who would discover similar scenes over the next 72 hours. They meant everything. The Wehrmacht did not understand what had happened. Their most feared marksman, the man they called Edelweiss, had terrorized Allied positions for 3 months. Officers died first, then radio operators, then medics, each kill chosen not just for tactical advantage, but for psychological damage. Edelweiss wasn't just killing soldiers, he was dismantling confidence. Men refused to move during daylight. Officers hesitated to lift binoculars. Entire platoons froze, waiting for a shot they could not see coming. That was the point. The Ardennes forest in December 1944 should not have allowed this kind of dominance. Snow-covered hills, bare trees, open terrain. Any movement should have been visible. Yet Edelweiss struck from angles that defied geometry, vanished before counter-sniper teams could respond, and used terrain in ways Allied doctrine could not explain. Intelligence analysts saw a problem, but they analyzed it the wrong way. They treated Edelweiss like a machine, a weapon system, a problem of range, optics, and firing solutions. They missed what he really was, a hunter. And hunters do not think in straight lines. The body count climbed. 17 Americans dead in 3 weeks. 2 majors, a battalion intelligence officer. Conventional counter-sniper tactics failed completely. That was when Sergeant Joe Begay stepped forward. Begay was a Navajo Code Talker, attached to the 28th Infantry Division, quiet, observant. He had been watching the pattern of Edelweiss's attacks, not as military operations, but as hunting behavior. What he saw was familiar. Edelweiss selected prey the way predators always do. He controlled fear. He shaped behavior. He dominated the psychological space before pulling the trigger. Begay approached his commanding officer with a proposal that sounded absurd to men trained in modern warfare. "I can track him," Begay said. "Not like a soldier, like a hunter." The response reflected decades of assumption. Tracking was primitive. Hunting knowledge was folklore. War was technology. But the casualty reports did not care about assumptions. Edelweiss had defeated every modern solution thrown at him. And there was a deeper problem no one wanted to say out loud. The German sniper understood the forest better than the Americans did. That could not continue. Authorization came reluctantly, quietly, with no precedent. 1 soldier, complete operational independence, no oversight, no manual. Begay prepared alone. He studied not just where Edelweiss had fired, but when, how snow held sound, how wind carried scent, how animals moved differently when humans were near. Most importantly, he began thinking like his prey. Not how to kill him, how to unmake him. Begay rejected standard equipment, rifles that reflected light, boots that left obvious tread patterns, uniforms designed for identification, not disappearance. He chose silence over power, blending over dominance, patience over speed. What Begay carried into the forest was not technology. It was 10,000 years of accumulated understanding about one truth: modern armies forget. Every hunter leaves a trail, even when he believes he hasn't. The first footprint Begay found told him everything. weight, confidence, emotional state. And one crucial fact Allied intelligence had missed entirely. Edelweiss was human, and humans, no matter how skilled, cannot hunt without revealing themselves. The hunt began the moment Begay stopped thinking like a soldier and became something older, something Edelweiss had never faced before. The first thing Sergeant Joe Begay did was slow the war down, not for the enemy, for himself. He stopped thinking in terms of objectives and timelines and began reading the forest the way his grandparents had taught him, as a living record of intention. Every broken twig was a sentence, every disturbed patch of snow a confession. Edelweiss had been careful, but care leaves patterns. Begay noticed how the German sniper favored animal trails, trusting them to mask his movement, how he chose firing positions near natural sound corridors, small dips in the terrain where wind swallowed the crack of a rifle, how he returned to familiar ground, not because it was safest, but because it felt safe. That told Begay something important. Edelweiss wasn't just confident, he was comfortable, and comfort in a hunter is a weakness. Rather than closing distance, Begay began to rearrange the environment. Small things, almost invisible. A branch shifted. Snow disturbed where no human should have been able to lie undetected. No footprints leading away. The forest began whispering back. When Edelweiss returned to one of his favorite hides and found Navajo symbols carved into a nearby tree, confusion gave way to something worse. Recognition. Someone had been there long enough to understand him. Someone who knew his roots. Someone who could move where he moved. For a man who had dominated through fear, the realization that he was now being observed did what Allied artillery never could. It broke rhythm. Edelweiss began changing positions more frequently, rushing shots, choosing locations that felt hidden rather than those that were tactically sound. Begay watched the change unfold without ever revealing himself. He followed Edelweiss's movements not by sight, but by consequence. Animals avoided certain areas. Snow held impressions where weight had paused too long. The forest, once Edelweiss's ally, had begun taking sides. Begay left gifts, food, water, placed where Edelweiss would be, not where he had been. The message was unmistakable. I am ahead of you. German counter-tracking teams were deployed. They used doctrine, camouflage, standard concealment. It didn't matter. Those methods were designed to fool eyes, not understanding. They hid shapes, but they could not hide disruption. Not from someone trained to read ground the way others read maps. As days passed, Edelweiss's shooting accuracy declined. His legendary patience evaporated. He began firing when he shouldn't, repositioning too quickly, abandoning concealment for the illusion of control. Fear had replaced calculation. Begay did not hurry. Traditional Navajo hunting was not about killing quickly. It was about responsibility, about ensuring the prey understood what was happening. So the act carried meaning. The weather turned. Snow fell hard. Wind erased sound. Conditions that would have halted conventional operations gave Begay everything he needed. Fresh tracks, covered movement, information written clearly for anyone who knew how to read it. The final phase began when Begay recognized the shift. Edelweiss was no longer hunting, he was escaping. Using everything he had learned, Begay predicted where the German sniper would go when pressure became unbearable, a place that felt isolated, elevated, defensible. Begay prepared the site without being seen. He shaped the ground, limited exits, created angles that forced choice, forced exposure. On the morning of the confrontation, the forest was silent. Heavy snow, low visibility, wind carrying scent toward bay, not away. The encounter lasted less than 10 minutes. There was no firefight, no chase, no heroic exchange of shots, just inevitability. When German patrols found Edelweiss the next day, the message was not subtle. Bound, weapon dismantled, symbols carved into the oak. This was not just death. It was defeat, physical, psychological, and spiritual. Word spread quickly through Wehrmacht units. Sniper activity across the Ardennes dropped almost overnight, not because of new defenses, but because no one wanted to be next. American intelligence took careful notes, not about the symbols, about the method. The hunt had proven something modern warfare was reluctant to admit. Technology had failed, doctrine had failed, only understanding had worked. But Begay returned from the forest changed. Traditional hunting carried ceremonies meant to restore balance, to acknowledge the weight of taking life. War offered no such closure. Begay had won. And victory, when stripped of ritual, has a way of following a man home. The war moved on. The Ardennes thawed. The front shifted east. New battles replaced old fears. But something had changed. German sniper activity across the sector collapsed almost overnight, not because of new countermeasures or superior firepower, but because the forest itself had become hostile territory. Men who had once believed mastery of optics and ballistics made them untouchable now hesitated to take positions they could not fully understand. They had learned a lesson no field manual could teach. There was always a better hunter. The official reports reduced the incident to a footnote. An enemy sniper eliminated. Threat neutralized. Mission accomplished. Sergeant Joe Begay received no public commendation, no ceremony, no citation that described what he had done or how he had done it. The Army understood the value of what he had demonstrated. It also understood the danger of talking about it. Begay returned home in 1946. He did not speak about the forest, not because he had been ordered not to, but because traditional Navajo hunting taught that some knowledge carries weight. It must be set down carefully, or it will follow you. Family members noticed changes. He slept lightly. He listened more than he spoke. He avoided explaining things he clearly understood. The hunt had ended, but the state of being a hunter had not. Years later, as military doctrine evolved, quiet studies circulated through intelligence circles. Not about the symbols carved into trees, but about behavior. Pattern recognition, psychological pressure, the idea that dominance could be achieved without overwhelming force. What Begay had proven was inconvenient. Modern warfare was built on the assumption that progress replaced the past, that technology rendered old knowledge obsolete. The Ardennes had demonstrated the opposite. Some skills do not expire, they wait. The Army did not call it folklore anymore. It called it capability. Special operations recruitment shifted. Training emphasized environmental awareness, patience, and psychological disruption. Lessons that traced their lineage not to laboratories or war colleges, but to people whose survival had always depended on understanding the space between predator and prey. The irony was never written down. An institution built on modernization had learned one of its most important lessons from knowledge older than civilization. And like many lessons learned in war, it came at a cost. Traditional Navajo hunting included ceremonies to restore balance, to acknowledge that taking a life changed the hunter as much as the hunted. War offered no such ending. Begay carried that imbalance quietly. He did not become a legend in the way soldiers often do. He became something more difficult to measure, a reminder that the most dangerous belief in warfare is not underestimating your enemy, but believing progress makes you immune to wisdom. The German sniper had trusted technology, precision, and reputation. Joe Begay trusted understanding. Only one of them survived. The story of the Navajo ghost remained buried for decades. When fragments finally surfaced, historians struggled to place it. It did not fit the narrative of industrial war. It suggested that victory sometimes comes not from advancement, but from remembering what was never lost. The lesson was never stated outright. It didn't need to be, because the forest had already taught it. Civilization moves forward by inventing new tools. It survives by remembering old truths. And when it forgets the difference, the hunt begins again.